everybody. It's another episode of Marketing Mondays. I'm here with Ronnie West, the co-host of the show, and we've got some great questions for you guys to answer today, as well as any that you guys decide to ask us during the show. So if you've got a marketing question you're waiting to get answered, go ahead and put it in the comments. We will be happy to jump on that. We will always make a priority of answering questions that come in live while we are on air. So if you have a question, go ahead and just put it in the comments, and we will get to it as quickly as we can. With that, welcome to the show, Ronnie. How you doing this week? Well, we just got started, but how's the week going so far?
It's going good. One in a sports manner, the Vikings finally won, so we're off the schneid in that regard. So as a sports fan, it's been a decent weekend. My fantasy football teams are all a mess, but as far as work goes, work has been good. Obviously we've been busy lately with a lot of different things going on and trying to, like I said before, trying to stay ahead of a lot of different stuff. So excuse me. But yeah, it's a good week. It's a good kickoff to the week, and hopefully the rest of the week continues on.
Yeah, I actually cannot say that my football weekend went well. The Buckeyes had a bye, so that didn't really matter. But the Browns laid an egg yesterday after starting the season really well. But we were down our starting quarterback, so I'm hoping it's just a temporary blip and we get back on track. So,
oh yeah, it's sports. That's one of those things.
Yeah, exactly. So with that, I know we've got a handful of questions. Again, if you're watching today, please go ahead, give us your questions, ask anything. If we're talking about anything and you want some clarifying answers to some different things that come to your mind while we're talking about certain things, throw it in the comments. We are watching those comments on the right-hand side of the screen while we're talking. So if you post a question or comment, we will get to it. So let's go ahead and get started.
All right. With my washing machine going off in the background. So the first question was one, like I mentioned to you a little bit earlier, I didn't really know exactly how to frame it, but I think it's something that a lot of people can take some value from. So the question is, how do I deal with a customer or a potential client who asks me to do something that I don't feel is right or within my capabilities? Is there a solution to politely decline doing work for them without upsetting them, but possibly still having them as a client in the future type of deal? This is one of those, like, how can you try to do the right thing, but whether it's against your own moral code or within, like you said, like I mentioned too, if it's just something that you can't do,
sure.
How do you approach that situation?
Well, I mean, the first thing I would say, it's kind of an interesting question because I'm trying to think about how I could frame it in a digital marketing setting, but the first thing I would say is anytime you're coming across something like this, especially if you're talking about something that maybe is against your moral compass or things like that, I would say, always be transparent with the person you're talking about and just be as, as open as you can about the reasons it may be. Like the only thing I can think of right off the top of my head would be, one of the things we've had as a rule from the very start of the agency is that we will not work with two clients in the same marketplace. So if somebody is too close to an existing client that we work with, we will typically have to turn the business down and not be able to work with that particular client. So, in those cases, a lot of times, some of them that may approach us, I'm friends with in the industry, I've known for a long time. I don't necessarily want to turn down the business, but it's the right thing to do because we already have a client. So in that situation, I really just try to explain to them what the situation is. I say to them, if the shoe were on the other foot and they were the client and somebody else were asking us to work with them, the answer would be exactly the same to the other person. It's just kind of the policy that we have. And I appreciate the fact, I tell them that I appreciate the fact that they reached out to us and gave us the opportunity, but with the current timing, it's probably not going to work out. And I've always, I feel like, had decent success in just being completely honest and forthright with people and telling them what the situation is. I think what happens sometimes when you try to create a narrative around something that isn't necessarily just trying to hide something or whatever and not really say the truth that way. Sometimes it gets to the point where then you're having to make up more and more and more stuff instead of just getting right to the topic. But I'm not sure. I mean, the only thing I can think of in the industry, obviously we work a lot with people in the window film industry, and it may be like somebody asking somebody to tint something extremely dark on a car that they don't feel comfortable would be safe. That could be something where, somebody say, being willing to say, no, I'm not going to put 35% on your windshield or something of that nature. Again, I think, if you have a position and you feel confident in it and that's how you truly feel, I think, just own up to that, be transparent with the person and tell them exactly where you stand. And if the business has to go down the road or go away, you're better off doing that. You're going to feel better about yourself anyway. So I don't know. I know that's not really a digital marketing question, but trying to do the best I can to weave it in.
No, I appreciate you trying to weave that in. To me, it was having gone through this situation and kind of trying to figure out exactly how do you respond. I think sometimes if it's something that you're just, whether it's so ridiculous and it comes to you and you want to like instantly react in a way that might be a little too sharp. Sometimes if I wanted to kind of, what are you talking about? Or like, to me, it was take a moment, think about it, like try to respond in a respectful way. If it's something that's kind of, that just makes more sense to if you want to keep them as a customer or just want to make sure that they're understanding of your position. I think it's obviously one of the things we've always talked about is trying to treat everybody with respect and realize like, hey, this is how this is. I'm sorry if this isn't what you were hoping for. Because then that way you're not burning a bridge. And I think that's kind of the key to a lot of different marketing or just relationships in general is making sure that you're not just giving a snap reaction that in the moment like they might not realize that it's something that that you're not going to be able to do. And they were just trying to gauge the situation and see if it was something that would work. So always take a moment. Don't just fire off, especially if it's a text or because obviously if you're in person, you're face to face and you can kind of gauge how that is. But a lot of times we're getting emails or getting texts and you kind of put a voice on it that isn't there sometimes. And so just making sure that you're stopping, thinking over it for a moment, and then kind of giving a respectful response back if it's something that you can't do. So,
yeah, I think being as much as you possibly can without violating somebody else's personal information or private information, being transparent and doing the right thing. I mean, usually if you explain to somebody the reasons that you're doing something, I think that usually goes a long way. I mean, I think a lot of times where people get upset is when they are assuming that you're turning down the business for one reason or another, and that's really not the truth, or that you're not doing it or something like that. So I think if you could be as clear as possible and let them know why, and if somebody gets upset, they get upset, but you just if you really feel strongly about it, you got to do what you feel good about.
Yep. No, I agree. So the next question is, what is retargeting? How do I know if it's something that I should be doing? And this is another one of those terms I'm going to try to bring out and define. I've seen this one pop up a lot. I kind of understood what it was, and I have the definition here. I'll wait, and I want to hear what you have to say, and then I'll kind of fill in at least what this one says here for me.
Sure.
So retargeting.
Retargeting is a broad term that could refer to a lot of things. So let's touch on a couple of those things right in the beginning. Retargeting could be anything from somebody like a company that has an email list of everybody that they do business with and sends follow-up emails with them on an ongoing basis to continue to keep them their past customers informed of the current things that are going on in their company, things like that. Retargeting, I think, in the tone that the person asked the question, is more to do with actually something we could all relate to. If you're on social media or you're online and you're looking at a pair of shoes, let's say, or a belt, or you name it, fill in the blank. And then all of a sudden you notice the next time you're on Instagram or you're on Facebook that all of a sudden you start seeing ads for shoes or ads for belts, or again, fill in the blank. That would be where somebody would be, you could call that retargeting, but it's actually more probably an interest graph targeting. A more traditional term of retargeting would be what I would call retargeting is if you visited my social media channels like Facebook, Instagram, you visited my website, and then once you visited my website, I've captured your information, and I'm going to continue to put my brand and continue to put my product in front of you. Hence the word retargeting. Like you actually got them to your website or you got them to your social media channels one time. They checked it out. You captured that information with a pixel on your website or just internal to the Meta program. And then you've continued to show them more and more posts from you because you know that they've at least shown a partial bit of interest in you previously. So again, there's sort of three different ways people term retargeting. And the other way that I kind of mentioned second would be targeting somebody through an audience that says, I'm interested in targeting somebody that's interested in shoes or interested in boots or a belt or whatever. So that, again, the fact that you looked at another company's boots, their ad, you're now going to start seeing ads for my company that also sells boots. That isn't, technically retargeting. That's actually targeting via an interest graph. So you're actually following the fact that somebody's expressed an interest in a certain category and you're targeting them. But when most people think about retargeting, I think the thing they think about is the fact that they've exhibited some sort of behavior online by showing an interest in something. And now all of a sudden they're seeing a lot of things related to that topic. That is probably more a result of them showing an interest in something, that being picked up by the interest graph, and now they're seeing it.
Yeah, no, I think the third one was what I kind of, when I first saw it, I was like, okay, that is where it kind of makes sense to me as far as if someone's visited your social page and your website, and then maybe you've created, like you said, if you have a pixel and you're collecting information, and if for whatever reason you might have their email, like email marketing might be the next step to kind of hit them with, like you said, if you're trying to get them in. And the way that I have it defined here is this is an advertising strategy where you target users who have previously visited your website with banner ads on various networks across the web. The aim is to bring these potential customers back to your website to complete a purchase or action. So it's one of those things.
Obviously, now that in addition to banner ads, I would say social as well. The other thing you can do that would be interesting from a retargeting is if you've collected email addresses from customers as you've done business with people, you could actually load those email addresses up into Facebook and you can run ads against that audience. So the people that are in that email list will begin seeing your ads. So it's another way you can retarget in addition to an email blast or a lot of other things. You can actually upload that list and use that as an audience that you want to show ads to. So retargeting is sort of an evolving word, if you will. And just, I know a lot of people might be watching, and we get people of all levels of digital marketing knowledge. So some people might be wondering what a pixel is. We've mentioned that a couple times. So what Meta allows you to do on the back end of Ads Manager is create a piece of code that when somebody that has a Facebook or Instagram account visits your website, it puts them in an audience, if you will, as somebody that has visited your website. So what you do is you take this code, you have your web developer, or if you're savvy, you could potentially do it yourself. You insert that code into the back end of your website. And whenever somebody that actually visits your website that has a Meta account visits your website, it will light that pixel up and put that information into an audience. That allows you to then remarket to those people. You could say, I want to remarket to the people that have visited my website. You could also remarket to anybody that's interacted with your Facebook profile. You can interact with you can remarket to anybody that is interacted with your Instagram profile, anybody that's watched any videos that you've posted. There's a lot of different ways that you can remarket, but a pixel specifically is referring to a piece of code that you put into your website to track people that have actually visited your website.
No, good. Thank you for jumping on that. I realized too, I've mentioned it and we haven't really broken that down. So I appreciate you going through that, which seamlessly moves us into question number 3, since you're talking about Facebook ads. One of the questions we got at WFCT was, how long should I run a Facebook ad, and how do I know if I'm getting results?
Okay. So a couple different things. Whenever somebody talks about Facebook, I'm going to assume we're talking about Facebook / Instagram, because it's all the same platform. So whenever you run an ad, whenever you start an ad, it will go into a learning phase. And depending on the type of ad, the number of actions, whether it's clicks through to your website, video views, whatever, it takes a certain amount of activity on that ad before it comes out of the learning phase. So the ad's actually learning who to position the ad, who to put it in front of to get the best results. So depending on how much budget you've done, how good of a job you've done targeting, you may come out of a learning phase within a couple hours of launching an ad, or you may come out of the learning phase within a couple days. If you go to the back end of Ads Manager, it will tell you if your ad is still in the learning phase. It'll say learning. I would always recommend that you wait till the ad gets out of learning phase before you make a judgment on whether it's working or not. Once it's out of the learning phase, I would say within 24 hours, you're going to have a pretty good idea of whether the ad is working or not. One of the benefits of digital marketing is that you don't have to wait an extremely long period of time to determine whether a piece of creative or copy or video or whatever is working, because you're going to get results relatively quickly. So unlike SEO, where maybe, let's say you do a bunch of work with SEO, you might have to wait weeks or months to start seeing the benefit of doing that search engine optimization. With digital ads, once they come out of the learning phase on Meta, you're going to know within a day or two whether they're working or not. If you're looking at the back end of Ads Manager and tracking whether it's getting the clicks to your website, the phone calls to your shop, whatever it is that you're trying to make happen with that ad, it's either going to happen or it's not. It's not going to take a week for it to start working. If it's out of the learning phase and is not working within 24 or 48 hours, the likelihood is it's not going to work. So you could potentially pause the ad, maybe create a new develop a new piece of creative, maybe change around the copy or whatever. But the reality is, if it's out of the learning phase and it's been 24 or 48 hours and the ad's not working, the likelihood is it's not going to work.
I just wrote down too, and this is something we did in the very first episode, and maybe we should do a full episode in the future of kind of walking through, I think a lot of the times, the back end of Facebook Ads Manager. Yeah. I think that's one of those things where we could probably do a few episodes on there. So if you ever do have questions when you're back there, and that's one thing, obviously, me and Patric will talk offline and kind of figure out if we should create other content to kind of show you. And like I've mentioned before, you've gone through and we have videos on YouTube of kind of creating an audience, but there's so many other little pieces that are within Ads Manager of, like you said, if you're going to tweak something, how do you do this? Or how do you add in certain things, or all that stuff in there is, whether it's, if you've never done it before, can be very confusing. And I think it would be helpful in the future. Obviously, we're having an on-air off discussion, but I think that would be something for us to kind of do in the future. And if you have questions when you're in there trying to figure it out, please let us know, because that's one of those things where if you've stumbled across something and it's something, I don't know what this is, or I don't know how to fix this, like, please reach out to us and we'll try to whether do a video on it or have an on-air discussion about it and go through it.
Yeah, I think, here's the thing. I mean, it's a little bit confusing if you haven't been using it for a while. And the other thing is it always changes. If I shot a video a year or so ago and walked people through certain things, the reality is it's changed within the last year. The type of options that are available, the type of things you can do within an audience have changed. When you build out an ad, some of the options that are available to you now weren't even available to you a year and a half ago. Some of the options that were available to you now are not available to you. One example, I know I talked probably just within the last, since we've come back with Marketing Mondays, about targeting people, specifically the audience of targeting where the people live in a particular location instead of live or have recently visited. Well, Facebook, for I'm not sure what reason, has recently removed the option of choosing only people that live there. And now the only option you could choose is people that live there or have recently visited. So that's actually really, in my opinion, doesn't make any sense. And it actually is made building an audience a little bit less effective. Because if, let's say, if you have a shop that's close to a freeway and you're targeting a 5-mile radius of your shop, instead of just targeting people that live within 5 miles of your shop, now you potentially are targeting everybody that's driven by on that freeway that's next to your shop. So it doesn't make sense. I've talked to our Facebook rep about it and explained to her why I think it doesn't make sense, but she's not in a position to make policy changes. But it really, in my opinion, it doesn't make sense why they would make that change. I don't really see the reasoning, but again, that's something that's just changed within the last couple months.
Now, this is a side question of my own I figured I'd ask. So when somebody's on a freeway kind of going through and they pick up that information, is that something that would be stopped when it comes up on your phone, like asked not to track? Is that like, how do those things intertwine as far as if you decide to say, hey, I don't want Facebook or whoever to within my phone tracking this information? If I hadn't hit that, is that where those people would be picked up when they're on a freeway kind of passing through?
Yeah, because let's say you've done that 5-mile radius and that freeway is running through it and you haven't told Facebook not to track you, it's going to pick up on the fact that you've been within that 5-mile radius and they're going to include you in that audience, even if you live 3 hours away, which is what bothers me about the targeting. I'll give you a good example. We have a client of ours that does a lot of work within just outside a major metropolitan area. And I finally figured it out because they were contacting me. It's a fairly busy metropolitan area. And they were contacting me and saying, hey, we're getting a lot of great leads, but the leads, I've gotten 3 leads within the last week that are from 2 states away or, in this other, and I was like, and I'm looking at their targeting and I'm looking at everything to try to define, like, why in the world are they getting these leads? Their targeting is set up properly. It's, in the areas that they're trying to target. Why are they getting leads from a couple states away? Then it hit me that it's like where their shop is at, there's a lot of through traffic going by their shop. So they're picking up these people and these people are being served these ads, even though they might be 6 hours away from the actual shop. And now they're still getting the ads. It's the point I was trying to make to our Facebook rep that it doesn't make any sense because we're picking up a lot of people in the audience that could potentially be non-relevant. Unfortunately, at this point in time, there's nothing we can do to stop that. But again, it took me a couple minutes to figure out why all of a sudden is this happening. And it's because of the change on Facebook that's happening.
No, that makes sense. I appreciate you answering that one. So our next question, it was something we talked about while we were at the convention. What are ClickFunnels, are ClickFunnels something I should consider using? How do I know if it's right for me? So essentially, this is kind of if you were to build out a landing page, even if you didn't have a website, and you kind of funnel people to this page. And I think it kind of goes with what we were talking about before. If it's through social and you get the pixels and you kind of are collecting information or essentially just kind of funneling someone to a specific page.
Couple different things. There's a variety of different things that people lump under the heading of ClickFunnels. So if you're building a page on your website that's designed specifically to lead people through a funnel, if you will, to capture their information or to create a lead, and you've applied appropriate SEO to that page, I think they can work really well for exactly the reason you said. You could capture information on a pixel. You could do a lot of different things with that. And sometimes when you're running an ad, bringing somebody directly to a page that speaks directly about that ad and bringing them through the process and boiling it all down to make it easy for them could be a really effective way to get a high conversion rate. By that, I mean a lot of leads for the money you're spending. Other ClickFunnels actually build a page on another platform that's not your website. So a marketing company might build a funnel page on their platform and run Google ads or Facebook ads to drive traffic to that funnel. And then the leads that come in through that funnel, they not to use the word funnel, but the leads that come in through that funnel, they send to you. I'm a little bit less thrilled about that, and I'll give you a reason why. One, you don't own that funnel page. I always talk a lot about making sure you're building on your own real estate. Don't build a house on somebody else's land. When you do that, you're not capturing any pixel data. You're not driving traffic to your website. You're not doing any of that. So even if it's working, even if it's generating leads, understand that you've built a house on somebody else's property. If you ever decide to move away from working with that person, you basically walk away from everything that's been built there. No matter how long you've been doing it, no matter how much money you've been spent, you don't own any of that. The other thing I don't like about that is I like all marketing to have an element of driving an organic element, whether it's through SEO or something like that. When you built a funnel page, specifically if it's not on your platform and you're paying for ads, that could be a really effective way to generate leads. But just understand that the minute you stop running ads, it completely stops. So if you build your business dependent upon paying for ads to run people through a ClickFunnels to generate leads, that's fine as long as you're okay with the fact that you're going to continue to pay for those ads. The minute you stop paying for those ads, the whole thing completely comes to a grinding halt. So the reason I like having the page on your website versus somebody else's platform is at least you're collecting the pixel data. At least you're potentially building your SEO out on your website and doing some different things that may help you if you stop running the ads. The other way is, you're sort of, there's no long-standing benefit to that once you stop running the ads. I don't know if that makes sense. I know I was a little bit long-winded with that answer, but that's kind of my own personal feeling. There's a lot of companies out there that run funnel pages and do that and can be very effective. So I'm not saying that you can't do that and be effective. Just understand, make sure you understand who owns what. Let me just put it that way. Make sure you understand where they're going to build the pages. If you own the pages, if somebody's built, and that goes for anything, Google AdWords campaigns, whatever. If you pay somebody to build you a Google AdWords campaign and they're running that and you stop working with that somebody, do you own the Google AdWords campaign or do they own the Google AdWords campaign? If they built audiences for you and your ads manager on the back of Meta and you stop working with them, did they build those audiences on their ads manager or yours? Do you own those audiences or do they own those audiences? I think it's important to at least ask those questions to make sure you understand what you own and what you don't, and make sure you're comfortable with what the answers are.
Yeah, no, I agree with all of that. I think one of the things that we had discussed about too was that if you're using ClickFunnels or doing something in that nature, it shouldn't be the only thing you're doing. Like you said before, it should be a part of all these different mechanisms that you're doing. You're focused on, like you said, if you're doing your own Google AdWords and you wanted to bring this on as something extra, but also you're creating organic content, you're posting on your Google business pages, it shouldn't be the one-legged table that's kind of holding everything up, that's bringing in stuff. Because like you said, as soon as it goes away, like you have nothing else set up or built that you can kind of pull people in or have created a following of any kind. And I think that's one of those things that we've discussed forever. Or that if you talk to us at the conference, we're not going to sit here and say, hey, this is what's going to happen. It's like, no, it's going to be growth as we're going to keep building and putting different pieces together to kind of help you kind of create a following, or just making sure that you're getting the right people, like we've talked about before with a target market. And so it shouldn't just be one specific thing that you like, oh, this is working, this is great, this is all I'm going to do. Like, make sure that you're kind of incorporating these other things into your full marketing strategy for sure.
Yeah. And ideally, things that are going to be things that have long-standing benefit. Building out your Google business page, getting reviews on your Google business page, things of that nature are going to have long-standing benefit. Having your website properly SEO'd or search engine optimization on your website, things of that nature are going to have long-standing benefit. Like I said, there is a place for doing this funnel type strategy if that's what you decide to do. It's just not a if you base everything on that and it's built on a platform that you don't own, just understand that the minute you stop putting dollars into that machine, the machine stops running.
No, agreed. We're right up at it, but I got one more I'm going to try to squeeze in here. It's kind of, not to say it's a basic question, but I think it's a term people might not fully understand. But what is website hosting? I want to create a website for my business, but I'm not sure what to pay. But I want to be sure I'm not paying for something that I don't need.
Sure. Well, depending on, there are some companies that will allow you to build your own website and actually charge you a monthly fee. And what they actually are doing is winding in like a website development program and hosting all in one. They're just not calling it hosting, but you're actually hosting on their servers. In a traditional setting, once a website's built, there would be a place on a server, ideally a large server farm that has backups and everything like that, that is hosting your website. And when anybody goes to your domain name or the name of your website, the URL, it points them at that place on that server and it shows them your website. So typically hosting is going to be somewhere, depending on what kind of hosting you get, whether it's higher speed or whether it has SSL certificates and things like that included. You could spend anywhere from $10 a month for really bare bones basic hosting with no maintenance and no security certificate or anything, up to, $50, $60 for a more enhanced hosting per month package. So a lot of people get their domain name, their domain registration, and their hosting confused. Your domain registration is the name of your website. The URL your website is at. The host, and that's usually once a year. You're going to spend $20 a year for the domain name. The hosting, you're going to typically spend a monthly fee, or you might be able to pay for a year in advance or a couple years in advance. But it's typically going to be between $10 and $50 a month for hosting your website. And again, depending on what features you get, we have a package we call hosting and maintenance, because we go in there and we update the plugins and we make sure they have the latest security protocols and things like that. So that's what we call hosting and maintenance. But you can get a bare bones hosting package, which is just going to mean when somebody goes to your domain name, they're going to see your website. So if you want to have a website, you're going to have hosting, whether that's packaged into some sort of bundle, Squarespace sort of, monthly fee, or Shopify is a good example where you don't pay a hosting fee because your website's actually being hosted via the Shopify network. So those would be a couple of types of websites where you wouldn't necessarily have to pay a hosting fee. But if you have a WordPress website or something like that, you're going to have to pay a separate hosting fee.
No, that's a good point. I have domain stuff coming up this week. And I'd say the basic domain, like you said, if your website name is going to be around $20, sometimes if it's a more popular term, or if it's something like if you were to just try to type in marketing.com, chances are it's probably going to be more expensive. So the more popular, or more, I should say the other way, the more specific, or like using your name within your industry, chances are you're going to have a lower priced domain name. So it's just something to think about if you're starting off, try to figure out exactly what you're paying for.
Yeah. And this, if you're searching for something really general, like marketing, the reality is it's probably taken. And if it's not taken, it's going to probably cost you, as you mentioned, a lot of money. But again, I'm still a big believer. I know there's a lot of other .co, .biz, all these other things. I'm still a big believer in a .com. If you can get a .com, I think it's kind of like when somebody, if you say to my website's iMagnet MGT, people assume .com. So when you have a .net or .other, you have to really be particular. You almost have to work harder to make sure people know it's .net, because people will assume it's .com. So if you can get a .com that works for you, I would always recommend a .com over some of the other options.
No, I agree with that statement too. Well, that puts us a little bit over, but I think we got all the questions I had here and didn't see too many that came up, but we'll have plenty more. Like we said, we will try to figure out more ways to kind of interact and do kind of more in-depth stuff. But otherwise, make sure to go and check on YouTube. This was episode 79. As far as that goes, I forgot to mention that to you. So we're approaching the century mark here in a couple of weeks or a month or two, probably end of the year. But yeah, so make sure to follow all of our social pages and you'll see a bunch of stuff coming soon.
Sounds good. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Have a great week. We'll see you soon.
Take care.